My name is Jakub Nowakowski. I'm the director of the Galicia Jewish Museum in Kraków, Poland. And it is such an honor and pleasure to be here with you and have together with us such a wonderful and unique and excellent colleagues and participants. This is a very special meeting. It's organized together with Taube Philanthropies, and I'm delighted to have Shana Penn, the executive director of the Taube Philanthropies, with us today. It's wonderful to have Professor Natalia Aleksiun, who will be running this show today, a professor of modern Jewish history, an expert in Polish-Jewish history and Polish-Jewish relations, Mr. Yehoshua Ecker, and last but not least, the most important guest of our meeting, Mrs. Alexandra Bellak, and last but not least, Elżbieta, sister of Renia, who will share with us her story and thoughts and background of this incredible history. Pani Elżbieto, to naprawdę ogromna przyjemność być tu dzisiaj z Panią. Dziękuję, że znalazła Pani czas na nas. Shana, would you like to say a few words?
Sure, thank you, Kuba. Witamy Państwo. I'm delighted to be here. And just say how great it is to be able to come together in this webinar. I'm speaking from San Francisco, and just a week ago I was in Warsaw with Natalia and Kuba and many other of our colleagues. And I'm sorry to be so far away in California now, but I am very excited about this program. And when Alexandra first reached out to us, to the Taube Foundation, to inquire whether we'd like to do some kind of public program together, I couldn't think of a better partner to work with than the Galicia Jewish Museum. And we have a long time relationship, but also because what I always tell people about what's unique about the Galicia Jewish Museum and how they do many of their exhibitions is that they're based on relationships with families, whether survivors or their descendants, who have been holding on to really precious treasures from either before the war, during the war, or right after.
Shana, we've lost you for a second. That's the unfortunate perks of connecting via Zoom. It will be far better for us to sit at the Galicia Jewish Museum in Kraków.
Yes,
for example.
We'll do that next week.
That'd be lovely, and let's hope Shana will come back to us. In the meantime, let me just say two technical remarks. This meeting is recorded, so should you wish to re-watch it again or share, it will be posted online, and the details will follow soon. And also, if you have questions, if we have time, we will be happy to take them. Please write them in the chat. The chat icon is at the bottom of the screen. Please write them down, and again, if we have time, we will be taking them. I think the Zoom couldn't stand those wonderful words about the Galicia Jewish Museum by Shana. Very kind of her. So maybe in the meantime, Natalia, can you take over, Professor Aleksiun?
I will, and it's also an honor and a great pleasure for me. And to the words that Shana got us started with about this unique lens through family history and history of individual familial treasures that Galicia Museum works with, there is one more reason for which this is a perfect place for a conversation about Renia's diary because it is a Galician diary. It is a diary of a girl who was born and raised in a Galician family, and we'll hear in a few minutes about how unique and how specific to the history of Jews in Galicia her background really was. So it is a perfect place. And we really want to spend as much time as possible with Elizabeth or Arianka and with her daughter. So let me limit myself to just a few words of introduction. And I happen to have the Polish edition of, my background is blurred. But if you haven't read Renia's diary, I think we'll give you a good reason to do so. And if you have, you don't need to be convinced that this is a unique text by a unique girl coming of age during the Holocaust in Przemyśl, a city with some 24,000 Jews on the eve of the Second World War, and with some 400 survivors when it is liberated by the Red Army in the summer of 1944. So you see what happened to the community in this big lens of numbers, but we'll look at it through one girl life story and one family. And let me start from the end of this diary. So the diary is interrupted. It's an interrupted life, interrupted hopes, and interrupted text. And this is not the only text that ends in this way. I kept on thinking about Davidek Rubinowicz, a very different child from Renia's background, but a boy who was sent to Treblinka with his parents in September 1942, and whose diary in school textbooks also sort of doesn't even end a sentence, and we only can imagine and guess what happened later. But Renia's diary is interrupted with the great action, the roundup of thousands of Przemyśl Jews in July of 1942. They're sent to Bełżec, but Renia is murdered in situ in Przemyśl, in the house where she was hiding. On the other hand, it's a unique text, not only because of her personality and her talent and her sense of humor and her curiosity, but also because it doesn't start with the war. Unlike many, many texts that are triggered by the outbreak of the war, she starts as a teenage girl, third grade gymnasium, writing about her classmates, her teachers, all kinds of school intrigues, fascinations she has, interests in fashion and politics. And so this is really a diary that gives us an insight into her life, her interrupted life, also before she becomes a child, a teenager, a young girl during the Holocaust, first Russian, Soviet, and then German occupation. But it's also unique because she starts it longing for lost, happy, idyllic childhood in Stawki on a family estate. And I want to call on Shuki Ecker to tell us a few words about this unique Galician story of Jewish landowning families to which Renia and Arianka Elizabeth belonged.
Thank you, Natalia. So the uniqueness of the diary is also in the geographical and social milieu from which Renia emerged, where she grew up, the background that, let's say, the neighborhood, the people, the places that made her who she was. And we can see this in the diary. It's not everywhere, but it's like an undercurrent that goes through it. The background in the countryside, in the rural part of Poland, far, far away from the urban centers. Stawki won a estate. She grew up in a place where Jewish life in the villages, Jewish life in rural estates was very common. So starting in the 19th century, mid-19th century, Austrian Galicia becomes a very, even more comfortable place for Jews. When legally Jews are permitted to really do anything, take part in any economic endeavor. And many Jews take that opportunity and buy land, and becoming in the old Polish and the Galician sense, part of the uppermost elite possible in social terms. Within a few decades, and towards the World War I, hundreds of Jews, hundreds of Jewish landowners, and many more leaseholders of estates raise their families, connect their lives with agriculture, with operating the village economies, and taking up the social meaning of that part of life. It means interaction with Ukrainians and Poles. It means interaction with the high society, Polish, German, in towns and villages. And it's so successful that Jews from other parts of Poland, what used to be Poland, what will be Poland, also cross the border and move into Galicia to take part in the opportunities. And this is actually where Renia's grandfather enters the picture and becomes a Galician by choice. We did a little excursion into genealogy of the Spiegel family, and it leads beyond the borders. He moved in, he rose up in the social ladder, he became a leaseholder, and then he became the coveted, he took the coveted position of buying actual land. And his son followed in his footsteps, and so did other members of the family. So this is a privileged background. It means access to possibilities, education, and contacts that we couldn't imagine for many other Jews in many other places. So in this case, in this sense, Galicia is unique. Galicia is particularly important for Jewish landowning. And Renia's diary comes from this background. And it is unique because not many from this background wrote this kind of diary. And if they did, most of them did not survive. So we have like a gem of a diary that combines many strands in Jewish society, in Galician society, in Polish society, at the very heart of the interaction between Jewish society, Polish society, Ukrainian society, and the many cultures that run through the region. And back to you.
That was a nice introduction. That was great.
Thank you so much.
Before.
And thank you for limiting yourself in time. I know you could go on for much longer, but we do want to hear from Elizabeth. I will just add on this note that I found it fascinating that when the war starts, Renia writes of herself as we Poles are fighting this war, okay. And we Poles, right? So this very much goes with this rather unique perspective that was particular to Galicia, but to that privileged background maybe as well. So Elizabeth, now to you. If you could say a few words about your childhood, this idyllic childhood on the estate, what do you remember about your family? How do you remember your sister before the war, your parents, your favorite activities, but also your fascinating career? And I will just invite you to share with us a piece of poetry of your choice. And
I'll
Shuki,
try to say something
if you could share the images in a few moments, so that Elizabeth can tell us whom we see in those pictures.
Yes, my child was very privileged, I must say. We had a cook, Hanya, who used to cook very well. And she used to make good food, good cakes. Then we had cleaning people. We lived on the estate of my dad, and there was nothing around. It was just a place where the smith would hoof the horses, and there was a stolash, carpenter. And so our life was very peaceful. My mother was very interested in my sister's writing because she was actually very interested in life as it was, where the birds were singing, and she was so romantic, always thinking how the trees are moving and the noise of it. And we lived in stuff which is vacant. We had a wonderful life. When we needed something, we had a man, a butcher, who took us to the city. And my mother would go to Zaleszczyki, or she would go to Tłuste, and she would buy the sugar, whatever necessary for the household that we did not produce. But we had everything. We had the milk, we had the woman made the butter, she made the ice cream we even had. And so when I was supposed to be born, they told my sister there was a baby coming, but they put a big stork in the window, made it out of a paper. And they said this stork was going to bring a baby. So my sister was expressed. I think I was born by a woman, not a doctor, right there in the house on Stafford. And now we used to visit the Zaleszczyki. My mother used to dress us up with Strój Krakowski. And we used to recite poetry. We have pictures you have there maybe with the starosta, who is the mayor of the town. My mother used to go very often to Romania. There was a bridge that came from Zaleszczyki, went to Bucharest. And so she would take the train there, buy us clothes, buy very good grapes. Although there was a vineyard not far from us, we would visit that. So our life was very peaceful. And my sister, I guess, already started to write poetry then. And we also used to go to city of Lviv, which is not very far, maybe an hour by train. And we recited I was, I think, only 5, on the radio. So my sister and I were already starting some kind of different things. Now, there was no real school in Stafford. There was nothing around. So that's why my sister spent a lot of time with my grandparents in Przemyśl. But my mother thought that I had, even my uncle from France, my mother had one brother. Now she was sent by the grandparents, my grandparents, to Vienna. She went to study in Vienna at the university, and my uncle went to Caen, France. And he eventually married a lady from the French society. But he came to Stafford. He wanted my mother to move to France, but she didn't want to go. She liked it the way she was. She didn't want to leave Poland, and she decided that I was the one that was, good for the stage, and started to teach me poetry. The two poets that I was very familiar with, one was Jan Brzechwa, and the other was Julian Tuvim. And I visited those people eventually in Warsaw. I went to their home, and Jan Brzechwa gave me a kaczka. I used to recite kaczka dziwaczka, and so he gave me a little kaczka, a little duck. So, I had a very interesting childhood. This comes later. So we lived a very peaceful, wonderful life, but my mother wanted me to be an actress, and my sister had to go to school. So we went, this is our picture on the river Dniester. On the other side is Romania, and we used to go and frolic around in the river, and then we would buy something to eat. And then when the time came Dożynki, which is the summer festival, we would recite and sing and go on the stage and meet the mayor of town. So
you're 6 years apart, right? Renia
right.
was born in 1924, and you were in 1930.
I think my mother lost a child in between, I believe. So our life was pretty nice, but then, of course, we used to visit so now I'm getting to be, let's say, 7 years old. Here's my mom and dad. They got married in 1923. My sister was born 1924. My father had two brothers. They were all land people. They were all the people who lived on land. And he had three sisters who also lived on land. Either they married the people who owned the land, or the women who married my uncles also lived on land. So they were all landowners or land leasers, whatever. As your husband was saying, yes, they were the elite. My father employed the Ukrainian workers. He also had Utsuli, who came in the summer to cut the wheat. And we also raised sugar beets. So the people from the factory of sugar used to come, and we have even some pictures here, the people who came to negotiate about the sugar beets. So we had a wonderful life, We didn't suffer from anything. We had a wonderful time. This is in front of our house. It's Stavki. The grandfather, Henrik, lived behind. Their house was big. They had their own apartment. We lived in the front. We had beautiful flowers in front. We had, us girls, my sister and I, we used to raise kinds of beans and things. We would send it to my grandpa in Przemyśl, and he would send us candy. My teeth were never good because we used to do that all the time. But, we were happy children, We had the little boat that we sometimes went on. One day I got...
Oh, look, here's Horodenka.
Oh, Horodenka, yeah. This is during the war. Now, I read the book in Polish, and I also read it in English. I had a very hard time reading it, though it took me forever to read it. Eventually, about a few months ago, I finally read the end of the English story. And you asked me what was the most terrible, what I liked. Actually, I feel how my sister has a premonition that something is going to happen. She somehow has that premonition. It's just crazy. She was happy, but she was always very melancholy. She was thinking, coming sometimes down from the sky, down to earth, to think about this life. Because she was very romantic, I would say. She was always seeing the beauty in so many things that I didn't see. I was mostly not. Oh,
Sorry,
this,
never mind.
this is
I'll
also
just turn that off.
by the river Dniester. It's my mom, my sister, and I. See, she used to buy us these dresses in Romania. She would go to Romania, buy us beautiful clothes, sometimes with red, sometimes with blue. So we had very nice clothes, and we had hats, and you know, it was very nice. So we didn't need anything. We had the food, we had the life. It was great. However, you know, my mother wanted me to be an
Oh,
actress.
here's Zealous Chicken.
So this is the river that goes to Romania. Isn't there Romania now on the other side?
No, I think it's the
What is
Ukraine.
this?
It's Zealous Chicken.
Zalishchiki Miasto. Oh, so the river would go, yeah, this river, this, actually, we saw a Ukrainian man here in America who made a documentary about when the bridge was built in Mościcki, the president of Poland he has, that was making cutting the ribbon to start the bridge. So it was in the early 30s that they made the bridge. So it was easy to go to Romania. You didn't need anything, I guess. I don't know, passport, but then maybe not. So my mother used to go often to that. Now, this, I think it's also, so they had like a, you know, nice place. It was also apparently a summer place for people to come and visit, to have vacations, Aleksiun. But we just visited the town. We didn't go to, we went to the water, how you see, we sit there, and that's how we enjoyed life. And in the winter, we used to have the sled and the horses and, you know, go visit the neighbors. It was a very simple life. Now, my mom wants me to be an actress, and my sister has to
Oh,
go.
there you are.
Here I am, Ariana Polska Shirley Temple. And it was from this that we found out that I was in 2 movies. One was called Gehenna, and I'm a gypsy girl, and one that was called Granica. Now, Gehenna, this man who made this movie was called Michał Baszyński. He made 42 movies. Now, the people came to New York for me because I was the only person still alive from his movies. And they made, you know, interviewed me for the movie. And this movie won, they made a documentary of Baszyński. Now, he was Jewish and he was a homosexual. And of course, that was in the 30s, a black story. So he changed his name. I'm not sure that he got christened, maybe. And he marries an Italian aristocrat. And he rides in a Rolls Royce and this, that. The people who made his movie called Prince and the Dybbuk wins the first prize.
The Golden Lion. in
The
Venice.
Golden Lion in
Venice.
Italy, in Venice. So they bring the movie here to Lincoln Center. I am in the movie, and they show when I dance as an actress, and he introduces me to the audience here in New York, in Lincoln Center. So that was quite an event, I must say. And they won the first prize. I haven't heard from them again, but that's so I had a very nice life. Now there's my sister in Strój Krakowski, the region of Kraków. And we used to, you know, sing, my sister did too, and entertain. I used to go to a school for ballet. I used to learn the piano, I used to play. I used to sing many songs, and of course I used to recite a lot of poetry. And you wanted me to say one poem, so it's not easy. Nie pieprz pierwsze pieprzem pieprza, wtedy szynka będzie lepsza. Właśnie po to pieprze, żeby mięso było lepsze. Ależ będzie gorsze pieprze, kiedy pieprza pieprze lepsze. No, yeah, I still remember my little poems like Mr. Tralaliński was from, this one was Jan Joshua, and Tralaliński was from Julian Tuwim. W Śpiewowicach, słynnym mieście przy ulicy Wesolińskiej, mieszka sobie słynny śpiewak pan Tralisław Tralaliński. Jego żona Tralalona, jego córka Tralalutka, jego piesek Tralesek. No a kotek jest kotek zwie się Tralalutek. Oprócz tego jest papuszka, bardzo śmieszna Tralaluszka. So I still remember a lot of poetry.
It is remarkable, and I must say that I think these poems are still taught in Polish
yes.
schools, although I don't think that anyone expects children to memorize them, and certainly not present them with so much feel and energy as you do.
I love those poems.
But thank you. I'm just looking nervously at the time, and I will cut in a way this story of expectations and hopes and developing a film career with you performing in Warsaw, in Cyrulik Warszawski, I believe, right? And visiting famous writers. But your sister at that same time, you mentioned that is interested in literature, and she even mentions in her diary that she's writing poems especially for you. So there is a conversation. There's a conversation between the two of you through art as well, right? As she sees in literary world a future for her as you go to conquer the stage. But if we move beyond this idyllic
that you're showing now is my mother. Now here is under the German occupation. Now my mother, German, as you know, is perfect. So we live in, first I get to go from Przemyśl, Zygmunt from the book takes me out. He must bribe somebody from the ghetto. We don't live there so long. And he takes my sister after me, I think. He takes me to my best girlfriend's father's house, Mr. Leszczyński. So he takes me there, and then they bring me Mr. Leszczyński, he could have been shot any minute. He takes me to the railroad station, which I just saw because now it's Ukraine. Everybody's going through Przemyśl. So he takes me to the railroad station, and we go to change in Krakow with Gestapo and dogs and everything. I just have a little coat. I have nothing except a lunchbox that my grandpa gave me with gold plate around, gold $20, but it's all covered up and a little gold in the handle. That's all I have. And he said, one day, maybe you'll need some money. You can always sell it and get some for it. And so my mother gets the job. And first I go to a convent. They baptize me, the whole thing. And I live in a convent. One convent, another convent. And I try to assimilate. I've never been in a convent. I never went to church every day and so on. But after a while, my mother is able to take me out. That's another big story. And now we live here. I almost died because it was Wapanta. They were catching people to go to the work. And we were going from the church where we lived with my mom for a while. And they take everybody from the car, trolley car. Nur für Deutsche. We go out. My mother talking to me in German, and the guys are standing with the guns, and we just walk away. And the rest get stuck on those big trucks to go to work in Germany. And we escape it. So when we get to the Hotel Europejski, now, imagine I get so revved up. We've been running all day long from that car where the guys were standing with the guns, and that we were hiding all day till about 6 o'clock in the evening. We finally arrived there, and then the director of the hotel said, "You're not living anywhere anymore. You're gonna live right here." So we moved, and this is where we're living now, Hotel Europe. My mother is assistant to the director, Europejski, and she does everything necessary for the Germans. The Germans officer occupy that hotel. And of course, we survived because the German officers fell in love with my mother. So when there is, now it starts the uprising, right? So we start going. He takes us in the Lazarette car with the big red cross. We go to Germany and go to Bad Gastein, where we finally get, the Americans freed us. It's a long story everywhere. It's just forever. This is us in Bad Gastein. And my mother makes friends with a priest who then lets us stay in Salzburg in his church, the whole thing. And now I attend the conservatory in Salzburg for a while. So my life is so full of everything, you have no idea. And so we lived there till the Americans come.
So your story, you mentioned Zygmunt Schwarzer, who was your sister's boyfriend, someone who tried to protect her and rescue her, right? And she was in fact hiding with his parents on the Aryan side of Przemyśl when they were discovered and murdered. But he also plays a very special role in how this diary survived. So if I could ask you, Alexandra, to tell us how do we get to have this diary, and how did you decide that this is a text that needs to be read?
Well, I'll let my mother answer how she gets the diary, because that's also.
So here we live. Mother sends me to a convent school here, and we live on 90th Street. I want to go see that little house. We live on the first floor. We get robbed in the meantime. And my mom says, suddenly the door opens and Zygmunt comes with the diary. And my mother can't believe it. You know, her name is Leszczynska. He knew that because he knew, during the war and when we were in Przemyśl, that my mother lived in Warsaw. She never lived with us. We lived with the grandparents on the Soviet life. That's why we have all the pictures. And she stayed in Warsaw with all the pictures which she had. So he comes up with the diary, and I never asked him who hid the diary. It would have been a great thing to know. But we never asked him. So he hands my mother the diary. My mother is so shocked. We all cry. We see Zygmunt, I especially, who knew him well. She went with him quite a long time. Used to come to the house all the time. So, it's just amazing. So my mother never read the diary. Now, my daughter can tell you how she rescues the diary.
I mean, so my name is Alexandra Renata. I was named after this beautiful, wonderful, talented writer, Renata, and who was brutally killed. And I just, I was always curious about my past, my heritage, why we had no extended family. And originally, the motivation for translating the diary was to learn and discover who my Aunt Renia was. What was she like? Who was this mysterious woman? And what could she teach me about my past? And then when we finally in a very rudimentary way, had the the diary translated, I realized this was a historical piece of literature that needed to be shared with the world. And in fact, you know, scholars and historians who have read it have said that she was a promising literary talent. In fact, Anna Freilich-Zayak, I think is her name, who's a professor of Slavic studies at Columbia, said that this powerful diary was a primary historical source of the Holocaust. And, you know, learning this made this experience all the more bittersweet, because now I know what kind of future Renia could have had, her and many like her. And I think I wanted to connect with a larger experience of the Holocaust. And, you know, I came to be associated with this time period. And I think it, you know, just connected me to the time period. It connected me to Judaism. And I think it developed me as a person and
The family.
yeah, and the family.
If I can add to this, because Elizabeth, you mentioned your sister's premonition, and she starts writing this diary in conversation with the diary, right? The diary is her best friend. She misses her mother. She misses you. You are in Warsaw, and she's with grandparents in Przemyśl, and she goes through all these adventures of a young girl. But she, like you said, she has a lot of gloomy moments about missing her mother, especially. But then, as this becomes a Holocaust text, it's very much her dialogue with God. I was actually surprised how profoundly, in a way, religious this text is. Your family was not particularly religious, but so much in it is her conversation and
God.
prayers, and this very intimate Jewish dialogue, right? It doesn't really start as a particularly Jewish text, but then becomes a very Jewish story of her thoughts and fears and hopes. But I wanted to ask, Alexandra, was your namesake, was Renia very present when you were growing up before this diary appeared miraculously?
No, actually. And I think that we're all lucky to have my mother here, because she's one of the last voices, one of the last survivors to talk about that time period. And, you know, I want to thank her for not just being here, but because she was reluctant to tell her story, because she harbored so many dark secrets that she didn't want to tell. And there's so few that have the energy and capacity to do these things. And I think that it's, you know, while she didn't want to discuss her past, she just put it aside so she could forge a life for herself here. And she never really discussed her past. I just took an interest in it and wanted to delve into my own past to learn more about my heritage. But she never really shared much.
Well, you know, my French uncle who married the lady from society, we used to go every year to visit, and he'd give us his apartment. He became quite affluent, married an affluent lady, and built 3 golf courses and God knows how many houses, but never gave me anything, but he was nice to us. But he told me, forget about the past, forget about the past. So while he was alive, my mother never did anything, you know, to upset him. So we stayed what it was. My mother was an Aleksiun, and the family accepted that, and that was it. But my sister was like my surrogate mother during the war. You remember, I was a kid 6 years younger. She was already in gymnasium. I was just in elementary school. She was president of her literary club. She was in a Russian newspaper. There was a Russian newspaper about her I gave it to my friend Marcel. He's in the book Maciek. He became a doctor. He was Zygmunt's best friend. Well, I gave him this. He was going to make me a copy and never did. So I don't have even the copy from a Russian newspaper. My sister.
But to follow what you said, to all of our audience who haven't read the diary, this is not only an extremely moving and rich text as a Holocaust text, but also a fascinating account of the Soviet occupation of Przemyśl, written by, again, as I said, someone with a great eye who catches phrases and moments and describes everything with a dark sense of humor and a sense of irony. So I think that this part as well is just a very, very unique historical record. Rescued, I mean, Renia's life was not, but her text truly is a miracle as it managed to come to us right from Przemyśl, where it was. I think the story was that Zygmunt left it with some Polish Christian friends, and it was handed over or sent rather to him to United States many years later. But I wanted to ask you, and we unfortunately are coming to very, very close to the end of our hour. So if you have questions that you would like to raise to Alexandra and especially to Elizabeth, this is your time to put it in the chat. But Elizabeth, if I could ask you a very personal question, but what did it mean for you you said it took you a long time to read the English translation, but I'm sure you read the original when it was handed over to you. What did it mean for you to meet your sister after so many years, sort of speaking to you from?
Well, I tried to translate it. I had this Polish friend, Jan Kudwanowski. He wrote 2 books. They even made part of it. He made it Mrówka na szachownicy, the ant on the chessboard about the Polish uprising. But I never could go any further because I would always cry and cry. So I got nowhere. But my daughter was so persistent. She said it has to be done. So she did it. And when it came out, I still today very often cry about my sister, because when we were on Channel 4 and we were in BBC in London, I said, my sister wanted to become famous, and now here we are introducing her to the world. So it's such a beautiful thing for my sister that I loved so dearly. And she was like my mom. I had no mom for 2 years. The grandparents were older people. They loved us, but big difference in age. So my sister was the one that's so good to me. But she was very different from me. I'm kind of the earthly person, staid and outgoing and everything. She was quiet, reserved, and romantic, thinking. She was so different from me. But she wanted to be famous, and guess what? The 24 countries translated her book. And now everybody knows how people can die and live, and the young, what their life is. Why can't there be tolerance in this world a little bit? Why this hatred? The Jews, the synagogues, the all the time, the mosque, the Catholics, they all kill each other for religion. Why? Is it God? They pray to God. So I feel very bad about it. I'm nobody, so what can I do? I just ask people to be tolerant, accept people the way they are.
Actually,
Good, they can be bad. So are the Muslims, so are the Catholics. That's the way the world is, isn't it?
Actually, Renia wrote about this dream of a peaceful world as well. You mentioned how she had premonition, and I thought it was so striking that just before the war starts, right, in the summer of 39, she says, you know, oh, I would like to go to France, but if the war doesn't happen, so far we planned a lot, but Hitler got in the way with Anschluss of Austria and then dismantling of Czechoslovakia. And reading it with the hindsight, right, that we have today of what was in store for her, for your family, and for the Jewish community and for Polish Jews, this is so eerie. I can understand how this is, in a way, a very bitter sense, right, of bringing Renia to the world in the form of this diary. I want to. Well, in a way, maybe end on a tiny happy note with another tiny miracle that happened through research, and in a way also encourage all of our listeners to take interest in their family history, in the heritage left behind, because through genealogical research, you found, after all these many years, family members you didn't know about. So I don't know if you want to say a few words about it, just to share this.
I was very excited to see it because my father had 3 sisters and 2 brothers, and of course we knew nothing about it. My daughter tried so hard, but I didn't know when they were born. I didn't know. So finally when you told me that we had this family, we were so excited. And actually they all were excited too. They give us a call from Brazil, and you were the one that helped us find it. We never knew we had them. You know, it came from, I don't know where. It was
so
great.
Shuki, if you can share your end of this reunification of
you,
of the
because you
family.
helped us. Nobody else ever did.
So I just want to be very, very brief. Both sides of the family looked for members of the family, and they never connected. And it's amazing. It's even tragic that it took so many years to connect the cousins.
I'm still here.
Yeah.
You know.
But finally they connected, and I'm so happy that I had a little bit of ability to help in this, and may other family members be found as well. So it's thanks to the rise of internet information, databases, and so on, that was even possible to make this discovery. But it's also because researchers on the other side, on the cousin side, also put some information online. So we're living in a new world that has information available in a way that it wasn't available for many, many decades until now. So maybe just 2 lessons from this. One, you never know what's hiding in your attic or safe. There could be many more things hiding in people's homes, and we should always be on the lookout. Anybody who's listening, check what's left around. You might find another diary, pictures, information, documents. We never know. It's another miracle.
Or a cousin.
And always there's always the possibility of finding the other cousins that never knew about.
You had a question mark on my father Bernard, that you didn't know what happened to him, and I wanted to know. And then maybe he died in the camp, right?
Yes. So we were also able to find some testimonies that possibly point to what happened to Bernard. And it seems that he survived until very, very late, until the end of the ghetto in which he was hiding. His niece, the one who ended up in Brazil, ran away, but he was caught. His brother and father jumped from a train. The last thing we know about him is that he was on that train. If he jumped or if he made it all the way to the camp, we don't know, but we don't hear about him after that. So like many other Jews, he went on a train and we don't know where he ended. We just know you never heard from him again. So on this sad note, but again, still, there's a lot always to be found and discovered and searched. So never give up on searching.
Thank you so much. And Elizabeth and Alexandra, if you would like to share with us a last word, a last quote from Renia's diary, a thought about her life and her text, and we will say after this goodbye to our wonderful audience.
Oh, I just hope that Renia's struggles, her battles, her hopes are a compass for the troubled times that we're now living in. And I want to thank everyone, because your presence here today is a testament to keeping her memory and the memories of all the Holocaust victims alive. And
we're all going, you know, our age. I'm 91 years old, so I'm gonna disappear. But at least I live to find somebody that's still alive from my family, which is nice, but it's sad.
Elizabeth, to 120 at least.
yeah, still a lot.
Thank you, Stola.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing with us the diary, the story, and until the next conversation. And Jakub, thank you for having us here.
Thank you so much. We appreciate Jakub. Dziękujemy serdecznie.
To ja i to my bardzo dziękujemy. It was such a pleasure and such an honor to be here with you. I think we're all very moved, and that has been a very emotional. Not only we learned, but I think this was extremely moving. Thank you very much for finding this time. Thank you for all your work on making this diary.
Anytime you want anything, we'll do. While I'm still around.
Well, as it was said, 120 lat, all the best wishes to everybody, and let me just again pass best wishes from Shayna Penn. Regrettably, she couldn't reconnect, but she's still with us. Thank you so much.
Do zobaczenia.
Do zobaczenia.
Thank you.
Tak.
Do zobaczenia. Dużo
Wszystkiego
zdrowia.
dobrego. Tak,
Widzenia.
dziękujemy. Bye.
Dziękujemy.
Bye.